Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, or how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business through to the end consumer, or how to go about finding an investor if you're ready for that aspect. Bottom line is we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important aspects of this journey to establishing and growing your brand. Tracy and I have been doing this a long time. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we've done a few good things, so we're here to help you. Please follow our podcast on iTunes or Spotify, leave us a review, and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. Tracy?
Bruce and I have been involved in consumer packaged goods commercial operations roles for over 30 years. We define commercial operation functions relating to sales, marketing, trade marketing, broker and distributor management, agency selection and management, new product development, brand acquisition and divestitures, and customer management. We also invite on our episodes friends and former colleagues from all aspects of the Road to Retail process to come on the show and offer their opinions and experience. Again, we encourage you to subscribe to our iTunes or Spotify channel at Road, 2 Retail.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you, Bruce.
Welcome. Tracy, good to see you, my friend.
Yep. Welcome to the latest episode of Road to Retail. Bruce, tell us what we're going to talk about today. It's just you and I.
That's right. That's right. So as torturous as that may be for the audience, this is a Bruce and Tracy show today. But I think the topic is quite juicy. So Tracy and I field lots of questions from small emerging brands asking us about brokers. You know, do I need one? When do I need one? What do they do? How much do they cost? What should I expect? So, and there's also been a lot of chatter out there around the value add, good and bad, about brokers. So we felt it was worth weighing in with our point of view, which is certainly not gospel, but both of us have been doing this for 30 years, on what consumer packaged goods, small, emerging, and challenger brands should look for in a broker, expect from a broker, and equally important, what the broker's going to expect from you. So Tracy, let's rock and roll on this one.
Absolutely. Fire away, Bruce.
Great. So Tracy, when do you think, in your opinion, when do you think a small emerging challenger brand needs a broker?
In one quick sentence, I would say sooner than you think. So I see a lot of founders trying to do it themselves. And what you don't want to do is try and learn on the job, think that you can watch a YouTube video and call on target, because you can. So a couple examples of when you really need one is if you're getting into a very large retailer, a Walgreens, a CVS, a Target, a Walmart. That's when you need to hire a broker to help you navigate those very large retailers. They're very complex to deal with. They have lots of portals, ways of doing business, new item forms, all kinds of things that you just don't know. So you really need to rely on an account-specific broker for those really big retailers, and sometimes even in a specific class of trade like the natural channel. I need help calling on Whole Foods or Sprouts or the independents. Another reason you would need a broker is that you've outgrown your sales manager. Your sales manager, you may have one person helping you, and you're expanding and growing rapidly, and you need more help. You need more arms and legs out there in the marketplace. And then the third one is that if you're expanding nationally, so you started out regional, which Bruce and I talk about a lot, and you're in the Northeast, and now all of a sudden you're growing into the South, the Midwest, and even the West, you need coverage in those areas that you just can't do yourself, or your sales manager can't do it, just can't really do it all. So those are kind of a couple of examples of when you need it. But I think the big thing I want to point out is don't try and do it yourself because
So
you will fail.
yeah, so Tracy, before I add just a couple of other ideas, tell the group what a portal is for those who might not know.
Yes. So most of the major retailers and even mid-sized retailers have an online portal where you go and fill out your paperwork, sign your vendor agreement, where you go to find out what your sales are, portal for what your deductions are. So there's all these information portals, so to speak, online that you need to know, and you need an expert to help you navigate those. Again, don't try and learn those portals. They don't come with manuals. They don't come with instructions. You either know how to do it or you don't.
Yeah, so to add there, way back, Tracy and I interviewed Jamie Grace, and Jamie now runs an excellent brokerage helping people win at Walmart. But for years, he was a senior buyer in various categories at Walmart. And the story he told Tracy and I was that it was amazing that over the years, brands that they decided to take on never made it to the shelf because they couldn't fill out the new item paperwork and figure out the portal.
Yeah,
So,
great example. Let me jump in there,
yeah,
Bruce.
yeah.
So, for example, Walmart has a portal called Retail Link where you can get your sales. Walmart got to be one of the reasons they got to be the largest retailer is because they don't manage anything. The brand and the broker is responsible for managing inventory, out of stocks, making sure orders get there on time, and then you get a vendor score on whether you're shipping on time or not. So that's something that you need someone specific that knows Retail Link that can go in there every Monday, sales are updated, and pull those reports.
Yep. I'll just add a couple of other things here about when you might need a broker. I would say you need a broker the first time you think you might need a broker.
Exactly.
Many of these retailers only review categories once a year. And sometimes, if a category is not really dynamic, they won't even review it for a couple of years. And you only get this one shot. So, if you're a veteran of CPG, consumer packaged goods, you know this. But if you're wandering into this exciting industry for the first time, you have to hit the schedule of the retailer. And we're going to talk about that again. But as Tracy said, there's one shot a year. And if you flub it because, you're trying to not pay a broker or you think you can do it yourself, it's learning the hard way because it's a 12-month wait to come around the next time.
Exactly.
Let's press on, Tracy.
Absolutely. So, Bruce, talk to us about what questions a brand should ask when they're screening a broker.
Okay. So I've hired a lot of brokers in the day. So I have a longer list, but kind of the big ones are you got to ask yourself first, what kind of a broker do you need? And Tracy talked about national, regional, what kind of coverage? If you're a New England based brand of XYZ, you probably want to expand from where your brand has some strength and awareness. You don't want to suddenly go, "Hey, how about Arizona?" Okay, you might get there one day, but probably not your best move as a brand with some heritage in New England. So do you need national, regional? Do you need brokerage by a class of trade? Do you just want to go into drugstores? Do you just want to go into Walmart? And then there's all kinds of very specialized brokers. If you think of it, there's probably someone out there doing it. There are brokers that specialize in cruise ships, in college bookstores, in airport stores. And it's important to find these right people, and there's ways to find them. Other questions I'd ask is how many clients does a broker have? Some of the big guys have hundreds, okay? And they're not going to really change because of you coming on because you're a small emerging brand and they're going to have concerns about whether you're going to make it or not. And we're going to talk about that in a little while. But you just should know, are there 200 clients or are there 14? Okay. You want to know how long have they been in business? You'd want to know if they have direct conflict. So if you're selling a cookie and they have two other cookie companies, you might say, oh my gosh, I want to go where I'm the only cookie. That's going to be really hard as a small emerging brand because if they have an established cookie client for 7, 8 years and it's going well, they're not going to resign them for you. They're just not. And in many instances, it's going to work in your favor if they have more than one brand in a category because that makes them more important. That makes that broker more important to that retailer. Okay. Because now the retailer knows this broker understands cookies. And if they're picking you up as a client, they must believe you have a chance to be successful. And then the other thing to just keep in mind, and Tracy and I will probably bring this up a couple of times, another reason to take on a broker is they are in those buildings all the time. Okay, if they have multiple clients covering multiple categories, I'm going to make this up, they may have 6 meetings in a week at Kroger. If you're trying to go it alone, you'll be lucky to get 1 or 2 meetings in the year. And it might be 30 or 45 minutes. And truth be told, as a smaller brand, if they're having a bad day or they're jammed up and they're behind in their schedule, your 45 minutes may go to 28. Okay, so the broker's in the building. So that's, Tracy, I think that's all I had to add there.
Yeah, so one other thing I would add there, Bruce, is I would ask about the structure. So who's going to be my contact? Am I going to have a brand manager? And then who can I talk to? Here's a good one. If I have a broker and I want to talk to the HEB, the person that calls on HEB, can I talk to them, or do I have to go, through you, and who's
Yeah, through your handler.
Yeah, through yes, there's the word handler. So understand who that's going to be. Some brokers will like, oh yeah, reach out to the account manager anytime. Or no, you need to everything, all the communication has to come through me because if not, that HEB account manager may get 30 calls asking about HEB. And brokers probably not going to want that to happen. The other
No,
thing I
no.
want to add too is don't underestimate the value of there's, as Bruce said, so many specific brokers out there. I had the opportunity to meet a broker at a fancy food show a couple years ago that only did the airlines. And I was able to work with her to get one of my brands that I worked on onto, Alaskan Airlines and a couple others. So it was great, great opportunity for sampling and marketing.
No, those are all good points. So Tracy, let's dig a little bit deeper into, what can an emerging brand expect or demand of a broker with regard to conflicts?
Yeah. So conflicts used to be a really big deal, 5, 10 years ago. Not as much anymore because there's just so many brands out there and so many, there's not a lot of innovation. So we use cookies as an example. You would be hard to find, a broker that didn't have some kind of cookie or snack in that aisle. I look at conflicts as a positive thing. That means that the broker has a relationship with that buyer. Let me give you an example. If you have a frozen item and that broker works in the frozen aisle, but doesn't work specifically in your category. Let's say they do frozen meals and you have a frozen ice cream. They're probably calling on that same buyer for the frozen category. That's a really good thing for you as a small emerging brand that they're already doing business with that brand. So don't think that you're going to find somebody that doesn't have a conflict. Brokers also several years ago started doing conflict houses. So they've created other sub companies to handle conflict. So you'd be really hard pressed to find a broker that didn't have a conflict. And I would look at it as a positive thing that they're already doing business. They already have brands with that buyer. They understand how that buyer works. They understand how what that buyer is looking for, and that is a huge value to you.
Yeah, and I would just add a couple of other things. An emerging or small brand really can't demand anything from a broker in terms of conflicts because they're not going to resign established, well-paying,
Yeah.
long-term clients to take you on because you are high risk. You're new, you're small. It's kind of a mutual bet. But let me tell you what you can demand. you can demand and expect professionalism, and in 99.99% of the cases, you're going to get it. I mean, these people, they only exist based on their reputation and their ability to get things done. So don't go in there thinking negative thoughts, think positively. And as Tracy said, the more business a broker does with a given retailer and specifically in a given category, the better those relationships. The retailer trusts that the broker knows what's going on, and the retailer trusts that the broker will be able to give you counsel on how to get things done properly inside their business. All right. So, Tracy, what should an emerging brand expect of a broker? What exactly will they do? And then, importantly, what won't they do?
Right. So the biggest thing to think about as a broker is that they're the retailer expert. They know the buyers, they have the relationships, they know how to fill out the paperwork, the promotional forms. They know when the category reviews are. Bruce mentioned this. I can't emphasize enough those category reviews. They know when that category review schedule is, or maybe that category review schedule is being moved or changed. That happens all the time. They know, like we've mentioned before, they know how to work in the portals, so they know how to do all that. They can help you with deductions. So really, they are the retail expert. They're your connection to the retailer, and that's what you should expect them to do. But don't expect them to get a win at every single retailer, because it just doesn't work that way. So what you can expect is that they know the review, they know what the buyer's looking for. They will help you get prepared for the presentation to make sure that it includes everything that specific buyer is looking for. So they're really your, I guess, counselor for that specific retailer or class of trade, whatever it is, but mostly when in regards to a specific retailer. So they're your link.
Yeah, a couple of other things. As Tracy already said, and I'm just going to say it one more time because it's so important. The brokers know the key dates. They know the line review dates. They know when they've been moved forward or backward, or if they're going to be skipped because somewhere up the food chain in the account, they've decided that there's not enough action in that category this year to merit all those hours in the store. As we said earlier, the brokers are in the building all the time. So they're going to pick up stuff you won't, having only one or two meetings a year. They're going to hear rumors, some of which come true and some aren't. And that can be everything from a strategy shift at the company or a rotation of buyers. So you might have to go back to square one on building a relationship. They'll know if someone has left the company or someone's going out on maternity leave and things are just going to get all delayed, but they're in there all the time. And two other things that I'll just point out that I do not believe a broker will do, and frankly, nor should you expect them to. They're not going to give you a forecast. They're not. That's your job. Okay. You may give them a forecast and they'll say, it looks reasonable. It looks attainable. But if you think you're going to go in there and tell them you're going to go from zero to a top two brand in the cookie section, they'll probably be very leery of that, and they'll ask you a bunch of questions about which we're going to get to in a bit. So they'll probably tell you if it's unrealistic. The other thing you need to know is when you give a forecast to a broker, and they'll help you with this, you better be at least forecasting that you're going to be selling at the velocity hurdle to stay in distribution. And guess what? The broker knows what those hurdles are. Okay. You might not, they do. Because if you go forward with a forecast that doesn't even show you hitting their velocity hurdle to stay in distribution, you will never get into distribution. Okay. So you got to know these things. And lastly, brokers are very professional, but they value the relationship and their long-time tenure with these retailers. They are not going to burn the house down for you on any issue. They'll go to bat for you. They'll fight for you within reason. But if let's say a retailer wants to discontinue 2 of your 4 SKUs, if the data is in your favor, they will make that case, but they're not going to stand on the table and rant and rave because they have other business there. So you just have to be realistic of what these folks will do for you. That does not mean they're going to roll over at the first sign of trouble. That's not the case at all. But again, they're just not going to burn down the house for you.
No, let me just jump in there too, Bruce. I would use the broker as input into your forecast, but I would not rely solely on the broker for a forecast. They're just not equipped to do that. So I think the biggest input that they can give a small emerging brand on a forecast is when is the category review, when are decisions made, and then when will the product be on the shelf? So if you present to a Whole Foods and you know that the review is now and it's going to be on the shelf in next July, then you can start forecasting, volume once that product hits the shelf. They can really help you with that on timing of when the product will be on the shelf. But other than that, I would not rely on a broker for a forecast.
Yeah, and just one other thing in terms of the broker being in the building all the time, they will be able to pick up on things like, hey, let's use cereal. Cereal's getting another 5 feet,
Yeah,
but General Mills is presenting 12 new SKUs. Okay, so there's going to be pressure. So now you know that going in, and you at least you can't stop General Mills from presenting 12 new items, but now you know there's going to be intense competition for that space, and your data and your marketing plan and your logistical execution needs to be really, really sharp.
absolutely.
Okay.
So, Bruce, let's talk about on the flip side, we talked about what a small emerging brand should ask a broker. What should a broker ask a small emerging brand? Because it does
Uh,
go both
this
ways.
this is this is a great question, Tracy, because I think a lot of times some of the brands we talk to, they're a little unrealistic in terms that these brokers are just going to line up blindly and bid for their business. So here's some questions I think that you should be prepared to answer because a good broker is going to interview you as much as you interview them.
Yes.
They'll probably ask questions such as, are you well funded? Do you have the ability to even try to take this swing with XYZ retailer? Can you ship reliably? Is your logistics firm, someone people have heard of and they're confident that those guys know how to get stuff from A to B? Is your contract manufacturer, if you're contracting, you're manufacturing out, is your contract manufacturer reliable? Have they worked in this category before? Have they had any, bad inspections from the FDA? Do you have a backup supplier? That's a question you're going to get because coming out of COVID, I can tell you this: retailers were very patient during COVID with supply chain mishaps. All the meetings we've been in, that is in the rearview mirror. And if you still can't sort out your supply chain, that's a you problem. Okay. Um, what will you be doing to drive demand for your brand? Okay, as Tracy and I say all the time, sell in is one thing, but sell through is what matters. Okay, so that's going to be very important. The broker will also ask, what are your reporting and contact expectations? Example, they probably don't want your 5 people calling different people at their brokerage house 8 times a day. That'll drive them crazy. Tracy and I will say this a couple of times. As a small emerging challenger brand, it's fair to ask questions, but you can't be needy. You
Right.
don't want every time your name lights up on their phone that they cringe. It's like, oh God, what now? Okay. So what's the reporting? A lot of times, you should expect, if they'll give it to you, just a quick weekly touch base. It should be minimum monthly, right? And then if they have dashboards that they say, oh, we always have the status of our brands up on our internal dashboard. That's great. And they can be very useful. If they have that, ask what kind of training they'll provide so you guys actually know how to use it. And then Tracy already got to this earlier. Who's my contact, right? You don't want them guessing and always calling like the head of the broker because maybe that person was involved in securing your business and they're involved if there's a big problem. But day to day, they don't know why the trailer didn't get to Kroger Distribution Center 214. That's going to be someone else's. And then what are your business expectations? If you're going in there telling your broker that your goal is to be the number one chocolate chip cookie on the first year, they're going to probably think you're insane and they may respectfully decline to bid on your business. So, are your business expectations realistic? Tracy, anything to add there?
Yeah, I would say priority wise, shipping is the biggest question that I ask anybody that I talk to as a new client who is seeking our help. And that is the question I would ask is, have you shipped to a retailer before? Right? So even though you might have a brand and you're selling it at the farmer's market or you're selling at your local retail co-op, that does not mean that you can ship it to a retailer. Have you tested it? Do you know that it can work, right? The second thing is your marketing support, as Bruce mentioned. It's so important. It's not about sell in, it's about sell through. And if you're a brand that says, well, I don't really have any social media, I don't really understand it, or I have 200 followers, that would be a concern to a broker. And I think the third thing is, how are you funded? How much money do you have? This is a long play. This is not for the faint of heart. And if you're not well funded, you're going to run out of money real quick because retail, as we've talked about on previous shows, is a very expensive endeavor.
Yeah, and I would just add one thing. Tracy jogged a thought. When the broker is interviewing you, they may ask you something like, "What's your view on slotting?" Okay, so for those of you that don't know, slotting is kind of the ante to the game. You have to pay usually in cash or free goods or the cash equivalent of free goods into a retailer on a per store door basis. Sometimes there's a flat fee. Usually it's per store door. Okay. This is a profit center for all retailers. And it is also one of the ways retail buyers are evaluated. Okay. So if you go in and say, I'm not paying slotting anywhere, that's going to be tough because you're a brand new brand. Now the retailer already has their antenna up that you're going to be difficult. If you really want to work with that retailer, your P&L probably should just assume you're going to pay baseline slotting and try to negotiate it as low as possible. Frankly, hey man, I'm a cheap Scottish Catholic guy. I hate giving money away. But if you pay the slotting, you're in distribution and you can't win the game. You can't even play the game if you're not available. So keep that in mind. That would be a question I'd ask.
Yeah.
All right. So Tracy, this is more of a statement. Why don't you just tell the group, how will a broker represent you versus the relationship with the retailer?
Yeah, so realize that relationship that the broker has with the retailer is number one, not with you, because brands come and go all the time, brands fail. They're still going to have to call on that retailer on a weekly, monthly basis. So the broker is going to lean in any tie or any conflict, the broker is going to side with the retailer because that's their bread and butter. That's how they make money. So don't think that you're the only client. It's a two-way street. So that's really where I would say that you just have to realize that relationship belongs to the broker, and that's what they're going to cover and make sure is intact in any kind of conflict.
Yeah, and just to further drive this home, and I said it a few minutes ago, Tracy's exactly right, but don't misinterpret that they do value the retailer relationship because they need that day to day. Brand clients come and go. Some they'll have for a long, long time, and some just won't work out within the first 6 months. But they will defend and promote your business to the best of their abilities because they're pros and they don't want their reputation damaged, but they will not burn the house down. If I'm a Target only broker, I'm not burning the house down at Target for a brand that I'm not 100% sure is actually going to make it. So
Yeah.
just be realistic.
Here's an example that I run into all the time. So let's say that your broker presents during a category review, and the answer comes back no. So sometimes buyers will give a reason. We don't have enough space. We didn't like your brand, all myriads of reasons. But in that instance where the buyer will not give an answer, don't just push and say, I need an answer, I need an answer. It's just, it may not just be possible. Some buyers just say, nope, I'm passing, and don't give any kind of explanation. So that's a good example of, you just have to accept that. No one likes to lose. But don't have that expectation that you're going to win, every presentation and every distribution, goal.
Yeah, and another thing, and this is just normal like business 101. You want the relationship with that retailer to be with you as well as with the broker. You don't just want to abdicate brand representation to the broker. Again, not saying that those men and women won't do a great job, but you want to get the vibe of what's going on in Target, Kroger, Ralph's, you name it. Okay, you want that. Those big presentations, you and your team need to be there making it. The whole brand story needs to come from you, and then the details the broker fills in and follows up on. The other things that I would just say around that, we already talked about that they're not going to burn the house down. Tracy, let's talk about compensation models.
Yeah. So typical broker model is for them to work on a commission. First, the average commission is 5% for a small emerging brand. And as you grow, that can be negotiable. The second thing is a retainer. So some brokers do require some kind of small, monthly retainer to cover their expenses. And then the third bucket is potentially equity. So they may ask for, equity in your company. Most brokers won't say, I'll just work for equity, so I wouldn't try that plan. And it may be a combination of more than one of those, but they're going to want at least, some kind of commission, which is paid on a monthly basis based on previous month's sale. So again, brokers are not going to work for free, right? No one works for free. And like I said, the structure would be either a commission, a retainer, or equity.
Yeah. So Tracy already hit the big one. The big one is the broker won't work for free. We get small brands call us all the time. They said, who can you introduce us to that will, just work for commission? And I was like, well, you're a small emerging brand with no history. I can think of nobody that will do that. So they'll ask for, as Tracy said, a fixed fee up front. So, and I'm going to make a number up. They might ask for $10,000 a month up front until you start selling, because they need to help you prepare to sell. You need to prepare to have a meeting. You need to win the meeting. Then you have all the paperwork for new items, portals, promotional calendar, execution, etc. Then you have to set up your shipping. There's a lot of work that goes in before the first box of your product scans across that register. Let's talk about contracts. I have a note here on contracts, Tracy. So emerging brands will likely be presented with the broker's base contract, because if you've never had a broker before, you probably don't have a broker contract.
Right.
You might be able to get that from a colleague in the industry, or if you've been in CPG before, especially if you've been in commercial operations, you may have access to an old one for your firm. But if you were from a big firm, you're going to have terms in there that a broker won't accept if you're a small guy. Yeah. So let's say you're presented with the Bruce and Tracy brokerage firm base contract. You should definitely have it reviewed by someone who understands brokerage contracts. Because again, not that they're trying to pull a fast one, but there's all kinds of stuff in there. There might be very favorable termination terms for them that you don't understand or care to read because you're so excited to get into business. And then that comes back and bites you in the hiney at some point when you want to go a different way. So that's my main thing. You're going to probably be handed their contract, pay the money to have someone who knows what they're looking for look that over for you.
So one thing I wanted to add there too is be very cognizant of, so the bigger brokers these days don't do regional coverage anymore. It's either national or nothing. So keep that in mind. So if you want to start small, a regional broker in the Northeast or mid wherever you want to go or wherever you're located is probably the best way to go. But then as you expand into with other brokers in other areas, make sure you're not duplicating coverage. So if you've got a Midwest broker that's handling, let's say, Minneapolis and handling Lunds and Byerly's and a couple other, and then you hire somebody that's out of Chicago that's handling some of those retailers in Chicago, just make sure there's no overlap. What brokers hate is the same people calling on the same retailer. It makes everybody look pretty dumb. So that's another watch out. But that's one of those other questions I would ask when interviewing a broker is, what is your specific coverage? Because again, a lot of the bigger brokers now have said, you need to hire me nationally. That may not be your strategy. You may just want to start in the Northeast. So keep that in mind that you might just have to start out with a regional broker.
Good point.
So Bruce, let's talk about managing that relationship. What's the best way? What's your insight into what's the best way to manage that broker relationship?
Yeah, so this is a really good one. So I have a lot of notes here. So I've hired and sadly terminated a lot of brokers over the years. And like any relationship, whether it's with your spouse, your kids, your dog, your neighbors, it takes work both ways. Okay. You're not the king who just like sends emails and expects an immediate response. So let's buzz through some of the things. Again, some of this stuff is kind of like interaction 101. So here you go. Set a contact schedule and stick to it. Okay. It's something you both agree to. Do you have a weekly touch base? Do you have a monthly touch base? But stick to it. But be realistic on your expectations here, as you are not yet a Fortune 100 company. So they're not going to call you every morning at 8 o'clock and tell you how you're doing in your 400 Kroger stores. They're not. Okay. Yeah. But you have to have a set contact schedule. Document goals and objectives specifically. Okay. What exactly have we agreed we're going to do and how are we doing? Track and update this internally in your business as the guy who owns the brand. Your team should be tracking stuff as closely as humanly possible. Your shipments and matching up your shipments to consumption to see how that's going. If shipments are outrunning consumption, once you take out pipeline, you're building inventory, which means you're not moving it through. If your shipments are under your consumption, you probably have out of stocks and you're going to get a call from your broker or retailer saying, what the hell is going on? You said you could ship. Okay. So document these things. When you see a gap to plan, like and these can be positive and negative. If you're shipping more than you thought you would be, or if you're not shipping as much as you thought you would be, figure out what that gap is and then ask for a call to figure out how to address it. And if the gap is positive because you're doing better than you thought, that's a good problem to have, provided your manufacturer can keep up. What do we do? Okay. And conversely, if you're not selling as much, do you understand why and what can we do? Okay. So tracking is important. Okay. Ask in advance how to escalate concerns. Don't wait until you need to break the glass. Ask up front, say, hey, Tracy, it just goes this way. One day we're going to have an issue. How do I handle that? Do I call you? Do I call Frank, the CEO? Do I call Melissa, my account executive? How do you want me to handle it? By asking them that on the day, which hopefully doesn't happen too much, when you have an issue, you're doing what they suggested versus mass panic and you start, emailing 14 people at the brokerage. Make sure points of contact into the broker are clear. They should not be bombarded with questions and inquiries from your entire team. So if you're the brand founder and you have an issue, who do you call? Okay. If as a brand founder, you might have a small team of, let's say, 7 or 8 people, your shipping person, if there's a shipping issue, the head of the broker probably doesn't want to hear about it. He wants you to talk to the person who handles shipping on their end. But get a roster of coverage. Who's responsible for what so that you know who to call and you're calling the right people. If your broker operates with a portal or dashboard for routine business reporting, have your people get trained on that. Don't look at it and go, yeah, I have no time for training. I'll figure it out. And then you look at it and you're like, holy crap, I don't understand any of this. So get your team trained so they know how to use it. Most of the time, the dashboards are pretty helpful. Okay. They're pretty helpful. So understand it. And then lastly, and I can't emphasize this enough, don't be needy. Don't call them 6 times a day with, crazy questions such as, so Bruce is the client, Tracy's the broker. Tracy, is there any way we can move up the line review at Target?
No.
No, no, Bruce, we're not going to do that. You guys are a small brand, and they've said for months that line reviews will be the week of November 16th. So just don't be needy. So that was a lot. Tracy, what do you have to add there?
So I want to emphasize that this is a partnership, right? So
Good word. Good word.
and everybody has a role. So your role as the small emerging brand is to be the brand expert. They should be able to come to you and you should be able to educate them about the ingredients, the features and the benefits, everything that they would ever need to know about the brand. That's your responsibility. Their responsibility is to know everything humanly possible about the retailer, the buyer, the category review, what is their margin, what is the velocity hurdle for the category. So those two things work together. Don't just hire a broker and say, here's all my stuff, here's my presentation, here's my sell sheet, good luck, let me know how it works out. That is a recipe for disaster. I would request that the brand owner, is on every presentation call with the retailer as humanly possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but you should have a role in that meeting, either in person or virtual, where you present and you tell your story. No one is going to tell your brand story better than you. So you tell
Nope.
the brand story and then let the broker be the retailer expert. So when are you going to make a decision, Mr. Buyer? When is the reset? Are we meeting your, margin requirements? All those things let the broker handle and you handle the brand.
Yeah, one other thing, I'm not sure where it fits, so we'll throw it in here.
Sure.
As a small emerging brand or even as a gigantic brand, when Tracy and I interviewed retailer buyers at retailers, probably most of the top 12 retailers that our CPG folks sell into, every buyer said the following: don't bring too many people to a meeting.
Yeah.
Whether it's Zoom, you don't need 18 cubes on the meeting. And if you're in person, don't bring too many. We've seen big brands, small brands think that by bringing 6 people, you show XYZ retailer how important they are. The buyer comes in and they're, especially if they don't know in advance that you're sending 6 people, they're like, what the hell? And their guard immediately goes up. And one of them had a great line to us. They said, don't bring anyone who's just going to sit there like a potted plant. Anyone you bring should have a role.
Yeah.
And if you're the founder and you're telling the story, by all means go. But if you're the founder and you guys have grown a little bit and a lot of it's being handled by your heads of sales and marketing or supply chain, sit it out. Sit it out. Unless you're going to play a role, you don't need to go. Okay, so Tracy, this is one we don't want to talk about, but we have to. So if without fail, at some point, you're going to hit some rough spots in the relationship with the broker or the retailer, and now the broker's in the middle. What are the best ways to work through these?
Communication, communication, communication. Oh, just always be in constant contact, but be on a schedule. Don't call 6 times every day, like Bruce said. So it's all about communication and also expectations. Set clear objectives and expectations. And Bruce has a great thing. You can't expect what you don't inspect. So make sure that there's clear communication and the broker understands what those expectations are and that they're mutually agreed upon, right? So if you've got unrealistic expectations and you tell the broker, I want to be a $5 million brand this year. Well, what's your sales now? 100,000. that's probably not something that the broker is going to, agree to. And then we already talked about this, be a good partner. So when they call and they need something, they need a sell sheet, they need confirmation on a support program at a specific retailer, they, need whatever they need, you need to go ahead and provide it as quickly as possible so that you set the expectation of I'm responsive to you and my expectation is you're going to be responsive to me. I think the biggest no is if a broker would miss a category review, because if you miss it, you're going to have to wait for a year. So you're relying on that broker to know when that category review is, when that meeting is, and then to make sure that where possible that you can be, a part of that meeting. So another thing is you're not always going to win like we talked about. So if there is a no, don't beat the crap out of the broker. Sometimes it's just no because of space or whatever it is. Sometimes you have to, you have to accept that and hope that the broker can find out the reasons why from the buyer.
Yeah. So I would just add a couple of other things. So, are you hitting your deadlines and commitments to the broker?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you said you're going to have the sell-in deck to them on Tuesday, the 22nd, get it there on Monday, the 21st.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hit your deadlines. And this isn't meant to be negative because small emerging brands, people are usually wearing 15 hats and hustling and all this. Don't send them junk. Proofread it like crazy.
Yeah.
Make sure your data is sourced. Make sure it's as current as possible. Make sure your contacts are there. Make sure you have, real packaging with scannable UPCs, all the things that just show you have your act together. And then again, one of the other things that when I struggle with any agencies, etc., first thing you got to do is look in the mirror and say, have I done everything I can to make this work? And if that answer is not yes, you should probably concurrently work on where you think you've fallen down. Because as Tracy said, this is a partnership, right? You're counting on them because they're in the building all the time, and they're counting on you to make them look good. Okay. Because if you send them 2 car crash decks in a row, they're going to be like, oh boy, it's going to take 2 weeks to sort through this. And it's just not going to be great. All right, Tracy, we're heading toward the wrap up. So, what are the final kind of broker watchouts? Like if it comes down to terminating a broker, what do you have to do as the brand?
Right. So first of all, realize that most every broker contract has a 30-day cancellation. So be cognizant of that. And if you are going to terminate a broker, you need to send, because you have a legal contract with them. So you need to send them a legal, notification of termination. No one likes to do that. No one likes to fire. No one likes to be fired. So it might be a contentious situation, but you have to have, you have to tell them this is why we're doing this and we're moving on. The thing to be aware of too is in your contract negotiations, a broker, because they put so much work up front to get into a retailer, if they are terminated, they're gonna want some kind of commission ongoing after the termination. And that's usually negotiated. The broker is gonna want as long as possible. Sometimes they ask for a year. They want to be paid for a year. I wouldn't recommend that. 90 days, maybe 6 months, but they do want some compensation at the end of the contract if it is terminated. But the biggest thing is consumer packaged goods is a small industry. So everybody knows everybody. So when you are having to terminate somebody, be professional. Don't be ugly. Don't, be disrespectful, and just say, here are the reasons why, and we're moving on. And we thank you for all the help you've done so far. And here's your termination letter. I'll be sending it and we'll be moving on. And then I would make sure that you ask for all of the files back. So any updates they have, anything, conversations that are they're in the middle of with a buyer or in the middle of a category review, make sure you get all of that information back. And if you're working with a professional broker, they will supply all that because they don't want their reputation tarnished either.
Yeah. So just to emphasize a couple of the things, some of the things Tracy just said are the reason you need to have your contract with the broker reviewed up front.
Yes.
Okay. In that contract, there will be termination notice criteria. There will be what we call a tail, as Tracy said. How long do you have to pay the broker after they're terminated, after their termination date? So the 30 days, then on day 31, they still expect compensation for X number of months. Okay. So that's why when they give you their base contract, you have to have it reviewed. Because if I was them, I'd say I want to be paid for a year because there's a line review once a year. The reason that you're in this position is because of the work we did. I want a year. You probably don't want to pay a year because you're going to bring on a new broker and then you'll be paying two. You're going to probably pay two for a while. So, take your sedative and just understand that that's how it goes. The other thing Tracy said, but again, this is why the contract up front is important. Now, if you sense you're starting to struggle with a broker, you should probably have a meeting and as long as everyone's got a cool head, document what's not going great and it's kind of like working through a troublesome employee. Put them on notice, tell them exactly why you're upset and where you think the performance is falling down. The more facts, the better.
Yeah.
If we said we were going to do this and we're only here, great. And then Tracy also made a very good point. Make sure you get a calendar of all the key discussions and dates, because if they've committed that you're going to have an update meeting with your buyer for 30 minutes on June 14th, you better be there.
Yeah.
And the buyer doesn't want to hear, well, I didn't know. My broker never told me. Dude, that's on you.
Yeah.
It's on you. You need to have your act together. And then lastly, when you move on from a broker, don't say anything negative because as Tracy said, it's a small world. And if you get the reputation as someone who talks crap about other people, or if you're a maniac and you've fired 3 brokers within 5 years, not many people are going to want to work with you because you're just going to get the reputation that you're perpetually unhappy.
Yeah.
And that's just not great. Tracy, anything else before we
Yeah,
head
just
for the big finish?
be professional, don't be emotional. So if you get a no at HEB or somewhere, that's don't say, "Oh, I'm firing you because I got to know."
Yeah. Hey, let me add to that. So Tracy said up front that one of the things to do is to make sure that you're building the relationship with the retailer and not solely counting on the broker.
Correct.
So let's say you get a no at a retailer, and let's just stick with HEB. If you've built a good relationship, you can go back to that buyer because the broker might not want to do it because they're like, geez, we already got no. I don't want to poke the bear. If you've built a good relationship, you should be able to either call or email that buyer and say, hey, buyer, I understand you said no and I respect your decision. I'm not asking you to change your mind. But to help us understand where we fell short, could you possibly give us a couple of reasons you weren't willing to roll the dice with us? If you approach it that way, where you're not asking them to change their mind, because who wants to admit they made a mistake and who wants to overrule themselves like a week later?
No one.
Yeah. And then word gets out that if you squeeze Bruce, he'll roll and you'll get what you want. But if you sincerely ask where you fell short, that helps you polish things for the next time. So I'm not going to say there's upside to getting a no, but there's upside to getting a no. It all depends how you face it. It helps you sharpen the blade for the next battle.
Exactly.
Whoo, Tracy, there was some good stuff in here. I hope it was
Absolutely.
helpful, folks. I hope it was helpful because hiring a broker can really be a transformational step in your business. And, selling is a skill. And if you've come up through CPG sales marketing, you know how it goes. You get one shot a year at these retailers, and it blows my mind when founders and small brand executives want to go it alone. And we always say, I don't understand why you want to fail for free rather than spend a little money with someone who knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Good words of wisdom, Bruce. Words of wisdom.
Got lucky.
Well, there you go. Well, that's a wrap for today. I hope you have enjoyed our conversation with Bruce and I regarding brokers. And just we continue to ask you to follow our podcast on iTunes or Apple, as well as Spotify, and also our LinkedIn page. So look for this episode in the near future. Good to see you, Bruce. Thanks. Great
Thanks,
job.
Tracy. Good luck out there, folks.